Aloha everybody, this is Kaylani from the Wild Wahine, and today we're going to be talking about Aries. Today is the beginning of the new astrological new year as we start with the very first sign, which is Aries. It is cardinal fire sign. It is also a masculine or yang sign, and we're going to talk about all of those things. March 20th through April 18th is Aries season, or when the sun is in the sign of Aries. Cardinal means to ignite, it means to start, it means to switch directions. It's associated in the northern hemisphere with the spring equinox. If you're in the southern hemisphere, then that would be the fall equinox. All of the cardinal signs kind of rule the equinoxes or the solstices. It's always a time when the seasons are shifting or they're changing. When you have fire energy, that energy is passionate energy. It's it ignites. It has a lot of movement. It definitely like feels warm. There is a hot and dry quality to Aries energy. So people who definitely have a lot of that signatures may have like drier skin. They may be like parched all the time. They may find that like being by a body of water or having like just like going into the ocean or going into like a cool bath or drinking cold water feels so refreshing to them. They might always be looking for things that are nourishing and that are kind of like cooling for them, because that there's this hot, dry qualities to Aries. So Aries is also like symbol is the ram. So the ram has these big, huge horns that males use actually to like butt each other, and that's how you like, you know, find the dominant one, and you know, you become like the alpha ram, and then you get to like hook up with all the girls, because you know that's what hooven creatures do, and humans sometimes. And so that quality of the head and going into things head first and being hot-headed and all of that, that's all like big Aries energy right there. So everything is filtered with Aries through the head. So they're just taking action, thinking about things, but they're activating on it. It's almost like it's an instinctual thing. There's a bestial quality to this energy. There's some signs that are, you know, related to animals or that are related to insects, and there's other signs that are, you know, human, and there's some that are like half and half. So this one is definitely an animal as we start. So we'll see these kind of instinctual qualities in this particular sign. So the sun, so if you're a sun Aries, meaning that your birthday is, you know, right now or in this next upcoming couple of weeks, the sun is exalted in Aries. So it loves to be in Aries. Now its domicile or its home is in Leo, but it's exalted, which means that it's allowed to burn brightly. It's allowed to just kind of sort of burn in a beautiful way, so that like without any bars on it, it's allowed to kind of sort of just show and be showy and like, you know, go out there and like, you know, with all the goods. It's almost kind of sort of like, you know, being a celebrity at one of the awards parties with all of the like glamour and all, you know, the makeup and all of the outfits and all of that. Like Aries will show up with all that energy, and that's kind of sort of a fiery kind of quality too. The passion, the showiness, the energy, all of those things are like associated with that. So the sun loves to be in Aries, and it's going to be really good for starting things, creating things, kicking things off, being seen visibly for what it is that you do, because the sun shines lights on things, so then you can actually like see them, and people are like excited about it, and it's like the energy that you have to like get stuff going and get people moving. So all of that has to do with like Aries energy. Now Saturn, which can be some little grumpy old man sometimes, is, you know, in its fall in Aries, simply because like maybe it kind of does, you know, it's like,
get off my lawn.
That's the kind of energy that Saturn has. It definitely thinks about things. It's definitely more predictable. It's more traditional. Doesn't just take action. It wants to know like, well, how much is it going to cost, and what is the return going to be? And, you know, I'm saving up several months for this. That is totally the opposite of a lot of Aries energy, which wants to just activate and do things now, which is why Saturn is in its fall. Now, Venus is in detriment in this position, and that largely is because Venus loves to attract things, to bring things toward her. She also really loves to make sure that things like look nice and are together, like all the niceties of how we communicate with people, always about like balance, like, you know, how are these guests doing at the party? How are these guests doing? What's fair? Everybody gets 4 portions of this and all of that. So there's a lot of qualities to like making things look good and making things pretty and making sure everybody's happy. The ultimate host. Aries energy isn't really like that, especially because it's Mars ruled. Definitely more about separation, definitely more about not so much about partnership as much as it's about like, you know, what you want to do and how you want to express yourself and what you're going to do. And there's not a lot of thought about like what people think. It's just about, well, this is how I am and this is how it is. You know, it's like everybody's getting hot dogs. You know, Venus would be just like, okay, who's the vegans? Who's gluten-free? Okay, guys, I got you, you know, veggie sausages. Aries, the barbecue would be like, we got some salad. Not to say that they're inconsiderate and they're not thinking about folks, but there is, you know, kind of this quality of just like, you know, doing what it is that needs to be done right now for yourself and kind of like moving forward with that, not really thinking about like how everybody else is in that situation, which is one of the reasons why Venus is in her fall in that sign. And so detriments and falls just means weaker, you know, the planets are weaker. They're not necessarily doing all of the things that they do. Venus being the benefic planet, she's a little bit weakened. She's not able to maybe give and bestow all of her gifts. Also because, you know, that Mars energy, because Aries is ruled by Mars and Mars has that powerful kinetic go get 'em type of energy. It's so busy getting things. Venus is so busy trying to attract things to it. It's kind of like a weird type of energy for them to be in together. Some of the like kind of professions or archetypes that are associated with Aries energy are warriors, martyrs has a lot to do with soldiers, police officers. When you hear of martial law, essentially martial has to do with Mars, which has to do with like war or warlike things. Same thing with martial arts, you know, and so a lot of fighters also, you know, fall under this. You find a lot of fighters, especially in UFC, who have Mars and Aries, whether it's Mars and Aries or Mars Aries in retrograde, you'll see that signature in some of the really, really good fighters. It's like that warrior energy. Martial arts also of Mars, war, and things like that. So surgeons are another thing, because things that have to do with Aries have to do with like cutting and severing. So cuts and insect bites, anything that punctures, anything that's venomous, anything that causes inflammation, whether that be temperatures or fevers or things like that. Those are all things that are kind of associated with Aries. Firemen, hunters, and then in the tarot, the Emperor card, which is number 4 in the major arcana, is Aries. It's associated with the sign of Aries. So you see this emperor who's a little bit gray. And this is in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, who's like sitting on his throne and he's dressed in red, which are all of those kind of sort of passion and valor and blood, you know, type colors. And he's got all these like kind of ram signatures on the throne. And you see him in all of those robes, but then at his feet, you see like full armor, because he's ready to fight. There's that like kind of Alexander the Great quality, like I conquered and therefore I'm ruling, but I also understand that in order to rule, I have to continue to conquer. So there's this forever fighter that always exists like in the realm of, you know, Aries and type things, where, you know, you're always down for the fight. You are always, you know, ready for the fight. You stay ready so you don't have to get ready kind of energy. Now we're going to shift a little bit and we're going to talk about some of the gifts of this energy, of Aries energy. What are some of the positive things about it? And then we're going to talk about some of the more negative things, or the things that you're going to have to work through when you have like heavy signatures in this. So one of the things that to me is really interesting about Aries energy is the fact that they thrive through friction, and they sometimes thrive in difficulty. And so I don't necessarily mean that that's something that you have to be in a difficult place, or you have to be, you know, like going through the worst time in your life in order to thrive. But it's just, there's something about kind of iron against iron. There's something about that friction, something about that like difficult time, which like allows you to pull within yourself that thing, and then you overcome it. So, you know, there's just, it's just like people who like to work out and they're just like working out on the highest setting and they're just like, yes, that kind of quality. So like if Aries in the 6th house, like your workout is like insane, probably, you know, you're doing like this much cardio, you're doing, you know, like you just see that kind of, because there's a lot of energy with that. Now, in terms of it being like, how long can you sustain it? You know, it doesn't sustain very long. You know, Taurus energy actually sustains for a really long time. That's long distance runner. Aries energy is very sprint energy. It's like the energy that you get like right out the pocket. It's the person that you put, if it's a relay race, Aries energy is your first person. You know, as soon as the gun goes off, they're out, and they have to be fast. The first person and the last person in relay are always the fastest, right? They have to be fast because you want them to get ahead quickly, and then they pass it off to the next person, and then that's when you're kind of getting more in your endurance, and that's when you kind of go into Taurus and so forth. So it has this kind of quality of like brightly burning and just kind of using all of that energy and having that explosive type quality, but then kind of petering out if it takes like too long. So there might be an explosive or aggressive quality even with like in getting into arguments and things like that, but then it's like over and it's done, and then everybody's like upset and hurt, especially if you're dealing with water signs and you're like, what happened? What's wrong? Like, why is everybody upset? Like, I'm not upset anymore. I got over it. Like, I processed through that because it's outward processing as opposed to inward processing. And then someone else is like off to the corner and they're not going to like talk to you probably for a week, which is definitely not an Aries thing. They kind of explode and then they're like okay with it because they just don't really hold on to it. Because it was just in the moment, you know, in the moment that was energy that needed to be released, you know, kind of like a kettle that's boiling. Another interesting thing about, and that I really love about Aries energy, is its decisiveness and its ability to make a decision quick, just like quick, which is so opposite of Libra. It's like opposite sign, you know, which is like, okay, is this right? Or is this right? Is this fair? Or is this fair? I'm not sure what I want. What do you want? You know, Aries is like, this is what I want. You know, very decisive, very specific, able to just, and that's one of the reasons why they're able to activate and move so quickly, because it's decisive. When you're able to make really quick decisions and you're not kind of mulling over something for a really long time, you're able to kind of get forward a lot quicker. Even if you do peter out, you've at least made 5 decisions, which puts you 5 steps ahead. There is this clear-headedness that happens, again, things that have to do with the head, where you're able to make those decisions because you're not really thinking so much about like what's going to happen in the future. There's not a lot of thoughts and futuristic thoughts, which can be also very worrisome. You know, you find that in like Aquarius and Virgo and, you know, Gemini, like thinking about things. So what if I do this and if I do this and that doesn't work and that doesn't make sense to me? And like when you're in that place, it's really hard to activate because you're thinking about all the possibilities. And if you have all the possibilities in front of you, you'll just be juggling possibilities for like the next couple of days. Whereas Aries energy is like, I made the decision, even if it's a bad decision, which happens a lot. The full committal to the bad decision. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Woo! It's okay to back down and backtrack. You know, you can make a commitment to something and not like stick to that. But if you've made the decision, you do stick with it with the good things, you know, and then you stick with it and you go. Sometimes it's hard though to like, you know, turn you back around and be like, okay, that wasn't a good choice. You know, sometimes you're going with it, you know, because it's just that bulldozing, like I'm just gonna kind of just run through and just keep ramming through. That's how I win and that's how I do things. And that might work really, really great in so many things in life, but like in interpersonal relationships, not good. Not good. A lot of times there's this like quality of being like offensive and then being on the defensive. So you can kind of switch back and forth with that a lot. Where like, you say this is what you want, this is what you want to do. And then if somebody questions you about it, you're immediately on the defensive and talking about this and ready to debate and very argumentative. And that could be great, especially when you're trying to like gain your voice. If you feel like you've been in a situation where you have been voiceless and you haven't been able to say anything. And again, like I said, there's this quality to Aries that will fight for itself, but it will fight for other people too. It will sacrifice itself. There is a martyr-like quality that can happen too. So when you're standing up for other people and you're standing up for what's right, you know, to be able to just say it and to not have any shame in it and stand in it is a really beautiful thing. And to defend, you know, the right or your rights or someone else's rights is also a really beautiful thing. Of course, it can have its negative side if you're not listening to people and listening to how they feel, especially, you know, with that energy that goes down to the heart, you know. For example, with Leo, which is another fire sign, everything gets filtered through the heart. So oftentimes you will find things that are kind of deeply emotional going on, you know, and so maybe it's like, okay, I'm not going to say this or I'm not going to make this action because I think this is how it's going to make certain people feel. Whereas with, you know, Aries energy, it's just like, oh, I should do this. That's a great idea. Do it. And then it's like, oh, wow, that didn't work out. That wasn't good. That wasn't nice. And then it's a lot of backtracking to try to fix. So you'll find a lot of times with Aries energy and with the signatures, that might be the place in your life that you apologize the most. It's like the kings and queens of apology, I think, are Aries, because it's just kind of like excitable and kind of lets that energy out. And then it's like, ooh, wow, that was like, I didn't, you know, have the filter that I thought I would. And in that sense, there can be this childlike quality to it. There's some folks that think that Aries is associated with the Fool, which is interesting. And I can kind of sort of see that because it is that kind of like, I'm just going to go like the Fool card in the tarot, you know, he's just like going off on his adventure and he's about to like go off on a cliff and his little dog is barking and telling him like, no, dude, stay back. Like it's a cliff. And he's just so excited to go off. He's going to do it. And there is that kind of like new you know, it's like that new energy, because you're coming off of like Pisces, you know, which is what closed that, you know, system, which didn't have any boundaries, and it's kind of sort of all over the place. And now with Aries, it's like you're giving birth, and it's something new. It's a babe with all of this energy, and with all of this power, and it doesn't really exactly always know what to do with it other than just point and direct it. And you really have to kind of figure out like how you want to negotiate that. Like Cyclops, he's a mutant, you know, he's got those like beams that come out of his eyes, and he has to wear the glasses so that he can actually focus the beams where he wants, because if he takes them off and opens up his eyes, he will kill everyone. So it can be this unbridled power that, you know, Aries energy often has, where it is not able to kind of control itself, but it is a very powerful energy once it gets started, and it's kind of infectious for everybody else to be around, especially if you're a person who kind of, you know, thinks a lot or just kind of is on the sidelines, like waiting for something. You wait for someone to make it happen and then you jump on, which is what a lot of fixed energy does. I mean, we'll see that next month with Taurus. You know, it's like, I'll let Aries start and then I'll jump on and I'll just keep it going, you know, because fixed energy is able to jump on the moving train and keep it going. There's a lot of passion. There's a lot of feelings. There's a lot of emotion. There's quickly falling in love, quickly being like wrapped up in romance or wrapped up in something that you're really excited about, something that you're passionate about with your job. You know, like, oh, it's the shiny thing. It's like, oh, something shiny, ooh, something shiny, ooh, something shiny, you know, and that can be fun. A way that it could be a little bit detrimental in relationships can be that, you know, you can get yourself into unhealthy relationship patterns, especially because Aries loves to argue. Great lawyers, by the way, great politicians, but they love to argue their point. They again, it's that kind of love of, you know, the opposite of you, of kind of sort of like pushing up against something. So if you're in an unhealthy relationship pattern, it's a possibility that you could be having that with someone else, where you don't want your relationship built off of fighting all the time, the fighting, the making up, the fighting, the making up, that level of drama that can happen with a lot of fire signs. You might see that in your life. So you definitely want to make sure that the fights are constructive and that they're not kind of seeping over into your relationship, and that you're staying in something negative, because it's the high of the win, which can happen a lot of times. They have a really unique way of resolving things through conflict. If it's like a healthy Aries energy, you know, being able to just kind of like have it out, and then resolving it by you know, you kind of give people permission to kind of be explosive in their emotions as well. You know, sometimes if people are a bit repressed and they're not able to, like, you know, say how they feel, you know, Aries sometimes push people, and they're like, ah, and then they're just like, okay, I got that out. And then, you know, a lot of times Aries can take it, you know, they're like, they can take an explosive, you know, emotive moment and not necessarily like personalize it and make it hurt them forever. They're able to kind of hold that, they're able to hold people's frustration and anger a little bit better, and then, you know, kind of let that slide, whereas other folks would have been, you know, the softer water signs like Cancers and Pisces would be like, oh my gosh, you hurt my feelings. You know, Aries is like, well, I'm gonna bark back at you and say this back at you, you know, we're gonna kind of sort of go, and then we'll resolve it, you know, kind of like kids on a playground, when sometimes my son, they would fight and then they would be like best friends afterwards, and I'm like, well, what happened? And they just had to get that energy out and just like be really honest with how they felt about each other, and then move on, you know, and then they were like the best of friends. There is this really beautiful thing about Aries. I think it's probably one of my favorite things, is their self-confidence. It's interesting because people feel like, oh, they don't struggle with self-confidence. It's not the fact that you don't struggle from self-doubt. It's not so much that you doubt yourself or you're just like, you don't feel like you can do it. They just don't allow those feelings to get into the way, because it's head energy, right? It's not heart energy. It's not feelings. Like, you'll feel the feelings of maybe not worthy or maybe this isn't good enough, but you're going to do it anyway, because you don't really care what the outcome is. You're not really thinking about what the outcome is. You haven't thought those steps ahead. Like, when you're thinking of outcomes, when you're thinking about how something's going to land, when you're thinking about like how people are going to feel when it lands, then that keeps you from launching and keeps you from doing the things that you want to do. When all you're doing is like, oh, this feels good, this sounds good, let's do it. You know, it's like, oh, I just recorded this song with my friends, like, let's just throw it out there, you know, or, oh, we just did this video, let's submit it to a festival. I mean, you hear these stories all of the time of people who just kind of did something and then they threw it out there and people loved it and then they gained success from it. And then you'll have other folks who are like pining over the script or pining over the music or pining over just getting it just perfect, just right, and then maybe they'll launch it or maybe they won't. And then you see these other people that are like, yeah, that was me and my buddy, we were just like, you know, like we had the guitar, you know, we were like in the truck and we just recorded the song and like Sony picked it up, and those other folks are like, you know, because they spend so much time thinking about it and making it perfect and who are they going to pitch it to and what are they going to do and getting their website together and getting this together, that they actually don't just activate. And so the ability to activate with Aries is amazing. You're able to just do that thing. And again, it's because you're not thinking about the outcome or thinking about how terrible it would be if you get rejected. If you get rejected, you know, Aries qualities are just like, oh, okay, well, it was too good for them anyway. Next, you know, there is this quality of this fighter quality that sometimes to activate and to do the thing that you really want to do, you have to do you have to do that. You have to kind of like disassociate from your emotions to a certain level so that you can activate. You're not really thinking or caring what other people feel. It is very self-full. Like, this is my art. I just created this. I created this and I had a fantastic time with my friend creating this. Everybody's going to love it. I love it. Why wouldn't everybody else? You know? And so that I think is such a cool quality, especially if you're a person who, you know, thinks too much or becomes immobile from fear of releasing things and putting things out in the world. We can all learn from Aries with that. Some of the challenges, some of the struggles of Aries energy is just that hot-headedness, right? It's that like, I can do it. I got this. I'm going to do this all on my own. I don't need anybody to tell me or show me. The butting heads with folks, you know, kind of, you know, the aggressive nature sometimes can be quite rough, you know, not understanding what it's like to be in partnerships. I feel like a lot of Aries energy struggles in groups, you know, very, very good on your own, very good solo entrepreneurs, doing your own thing, managers. But if you have to answer to somebody, if you have to, like, you know, relationships with your children, relationships with your family member, relationships with your loved ones, lovers and so forth, wives, husbands, those can be sometimes a little rough because who's backing down? When you're the fighter, when you're the warrior, when you're the leader, you know, do you listen to, you know, everyone else? You're so used to defending and kind of expressing that sometimes it doesn't feel like there might be room for other people. And that's how other people will feel about it. Like, am I even here? Like you're taking up so much space. I don't feel like I have enough space to be in this relationship. So those are things that you definitely have to work on. A lot of times if you have these signatures, impatience. Again, when anything is hot and it's moving fast, it is not patient. A boulder rolling down a hill is not patient. It's not. That's just physics, right? It's just going to roll and it's going to go. And so sometimes you'll have that energy. You'll have that, like, you know, forward momentum. And if you get going, it's hard to stop. You know, it's hard to kind of like restrain yourself. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of Aries, especially when it comes to verbal stuff. Verbal diarrhea, just stuff coming out of your mouth when you're angry or when you're impassioned or when you're excited. Like, you know, Aries has that quality to like not even say a mean thing, just an inappropriate thing or a way too personal, told somebody's secret, you know, and it's just like, that was just not what was intended, but just getting caught up in the moment, in the passion, in the joy, and the laughter, and it's like stuff comes out and just not being able to really like hold it in, because the whole point of it is to push it out, you know, that's the energy. So the learning space becomes, how can I hold? How can I slow down? How can I think before I react? Those are some really good things. There is a quality that can be quite selfish sometimes and very me-centered instead of we-centered, especially when you have to work in a community. And we can see that today, right? We can see that with Miss Rona and what has happened all last year. And this year it has been a lot of me, we. You know, my rights and what I want to do, and then, well, your rights can't step over my rights and what I want to do, and my right to be healthy and my right to be safe and all of those things. And so we see this a lot. We're seeing this a lot right now, this energy kind of play out where people are fighting for their rights. That's a very big, you know, we've had a lot of Mars squared, and I feel like whenever we have that, there's always been like a group of people who are saying like, this is not okay, and now we're standing up empowered and we're going to fight for things. That tends to be the martial way of doing things. So sometimes that is necessary, but leaning into a Venusian way of doing things, which is more like bonobos, you know, they're like more, you know, bonobos are like of the chimp variety that like they come together through sex, right? They're like, okay, let's hook up. We're upset with each other. Let's hook up. Chimps are like, you came into my area, I am going to, you know, eviscerate you and maim you and like take all your fingers and toes and then make you slink around and be an example for everyone else as to why they shouldn't come into my territory. We don't want to be like chimps. We want to be like bonobos, but like safe bonobos. Okay. There is an argumentative quality sometimes that there is, you know, and thinking that you're right. I think that's a very fire sign thing. And I think it's because, not making excuses, because you guys know that I have a lot of fire in my chart, but there is this quality that whenever the sun or whenever fire is involved, there is this quality of seeing things and knowing things and having this kind of like, I can see it, therefore I know it because I see it. Doesn't everybody else see it? Well, why can't anyone else see it? Like, this is right, you know? And so there is that quality. And of course, if you're not doing that forward thinking, you're not really thinking about what you don't see. You're not really thinking about it from another perspective. So you're just kind of focused on, you know, what you think is right. And you're not really wanting to get any other opinions. I would say the last thing that is the really big challenge for big Aries energy is boundary and accepting them, acknowledging them, and respecting them when people give them to you. And people will give them a lot because of the energy that is just overflowing. A lot of times the largesse of that, you know, people will often throw a boundary up in your face and say, no, you need to not do this, or don't call, or don't do this, or you need to stay back. You'll get that a lot. So, and that's going to feel not good. That's going to feel like something you want to fight about, you know, because that's how you do things, right? Like if someone tells you no, you know, let me fight, let me push through that. And so learning how to understand when someone says no, maybe like, no, I don't like your idea for this book. Yes, that's a time to say, oh, but I have other ideas, so let me give you those, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, they don't like my idea and I'm just gonna like go. No. But if someone says, you know, we've been spending too much time together and I need a break, that is not a time for you to be like, well, no, we don't. We need to be together. We need to do that. You know, so those are kinds of the things that we're doing. We're stepping up when we need to, and then we're allowing when we need to as well, because that's very, very important, and respecting other people's boundaries and not pushing people to the point where maybe they even have to give them. Like if you could have that self-control where you're like, you know what, I think I'm overstepping. That's going to feel so much better for you than to have someone else tell you that you need to back off, because that's gonna like ignite that like inner fighter that is like, okay, I'm down for it. What's going on? I'm gonna list 5 reasons as to why, you know, this boundary is not okay. Or if you're drawing boundaries, that's fine, as long as I'm inside it, you know? So you gotta kind of negotiate that, and that is very important. So this has been your Aries sign chat. Let me know if you guys have your sun, moon, or rising in Aries, or where Aries might land in your chart. Like, did you think that this was good? Was this helpful? Did I hit on some things? Did I embarrass you guys? Did I out you? Were you like, how did she know that? Or were there some other things that you want to add to this for those of you who have these signatures? Please let me know. Please comment below. You can share and like this video. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and also Instagram. Again, my name is Kaylani. This is the Wild Wahine. You can find me also Mondays. I do an Astro Chat weekly, Monday nights. And so I just tell everybody about all the major signatures of the upcoming week, so you can work with that energy. And if you're interested in booking a natal chart reading or a tarot reading, you can find me at www.thewildwahine.as.me. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and aloha.